Mihalek, Pennsylvania representative from the 40th Legislative District and my state representative. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing very well, Rabbi. It's really actually nice to see you. I want to thank you for reaching out, and I think you're just doing a fantastic job of keeping your congregation engaged during this really unique and very difficult time for all of us. The last 7 weeks have certainly been unforgettable for me and my family. It's as if our world has just been turned upside down, right? Overnight, the kids were suddenly out of school. A lot of people just were suddenly unemployed. And we were all very concerned about our health and just keeping our families safe. The House of Representatives has been in session every week since the start of the pandemic, and just trying to make sure that we're doing everything that we can as a legislative body to keep our citizens, safe, and taking some of the stories that we're getting back home here and turning it into productive pieces of legislation. We adopted the ability to actually vote remotely, and I've taken advantage of that a couple of times, but just find it to be more productive for me to be in the Capitol and doing what I need to do. So it's been a little bit more of a balancing act than usual, leaving the family and everything, traveling back and forth to the Capitol, trying to stay on top of all of the communications from the district and making sure my husband and myself are maintaining that educational component in the home for the kids as they transition to the remote instruction. So it's challenging. We're all being challenged right now, and I'm just doing my best day by day, like we all are.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I've been talking to a number of people about, for those of us who are fortunate to have jobs, it seems like we're working far harder and with far fewer potential days off than when things were, quote, open.
Right. No days off right now.
That's right. So let's dive on in. Unemployment is a major concern right now, not only in Pennsylvania, but around the country. It continues to rise as we're doing everything possible to save lives. You've been working pretty hard to pass some interesting bills to open various sectors of the economy. And I'm curious what you've been working on, if you'll say a little bit more about those.
Right. I mean, you're exactly right. It's just been so difficult for so many right here in Pennsylvania and across the country. Pre-pandemic, we had 40,000 open unemployment claims, and literally overnight, we went to 1 million. That number continues to crawl. I think it's at 1.6 million right now. And that doesn't include our self-employed, our business owners, and people that wouldn't otherwise qualify for the traditional, state unemployment. So the House has been working on legislation for the last several weeks, to kind of deal with, what is safe to open, what is not safe. Different industries like construction, which actually opened up today, real estate, so forth, where it would be practical for industries to operate in accordance with the CDC guidelines and following best practices from our health experts. In industries like that, social distancing can be easily accomplished. There would be no need for a large gathering, close human interaction. I personally author a bill to open up car sales in Pennsylvania, which sounds, silly at first, but I was getting story after story of people that just needed a replacement car and they couldn't get it without crossing state lines. And I thought that was, pretty unfair. A couple of nurses and people that were on the front lines just needing to, it was just time to get a new car. And I thought this was, something that could be, really easily accomplished. I work with the automotive industry to just develop best practices in terms of how to disinfect the vehicle, how to minimize or eliminate that customer interaction. It was just, they could fulfill a need, and we felt that they could fulfill it safely. So I worked on that, and the House continues to, work through these bills. And it's not just a short-term fix. It's not just like getting one industry, back up and running, but we're attempting to make a plan here for the long haul. This virus just isn't leaving us anytime soon. We're still a ways away from a vaccine. As we can get different industries back online, we need to figure out, how are they going to operate in the future and how are they going to adapt to the changed world?
That's right. I think it's something that's particularly scary. We often talk about going back to what was normal, and I'm not sure that's right. Right? We're gonna go back to being together, but that's going to look very differently.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I realize you don't have a crystal ball that works any better than mine, but I'm interested in kind of what's next. What other sectors of the economy, where does Pennsylvania need to keep looking as more things safely reopen?
Mhm. And I think that's where we need to look, is a long-term plan. Like businesses and consumers alike are going to have to adapt. I don't see us going back to, normal, to the back to the way things were, as much as we would all like to just wake up one day and this was all, a dream, and we can go back to, how things were 2 months ago. It's not going to happen, and we all need to be prepared for it. Our businesses need to be prepared for it. And in terms of, what that looks like, that's what we need to be, working on, installing, plexiglass, and making that, that human interaction less so for the foreseeable future. That's what we should be doing, is just looking to the long term right now.
Right? Unemployment numbers continue to rise throughout the community, and I'm curious how people begin to access those various. I understand that there's a separate portal for those who may have formerly been ineligible, who are whether you're a self-employed, whether you're a gig worker, so that there might be a different system there versus the traditional system. If someone finds themselves unemployed, where do they begin to turn for help?
It's so confusing. I've spoken to so many of our residents who have, never been in this situation before. They're suddenly without unemployment. They're frustrated. They feel left behind, and they feel without any sort of direction. And it's been just such a tense situation with all of these, really confusing links, and, waiting periods, and, this and that. And it's so frustrating on so many fronts. And that's why I chose not to close my district office, even though that was certainly an option. My staff has been amazing, answering calls 7 days a week, to make sure that we can assist in any way possible. So there are, a number of websites. And if you do have questions about, I'm going to throw out all the websites, because there's, federal system, there's a state system, but we can certainly, put you in the right place. We have, guidance that we can, ask you, are you in this situation? Because it's certainly different for every single person out there. And we can walk you through it if you do need help.
Wonderful. It's important to know that you're a great resource to turn to now, as always, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm curious to know a little bit more. As you mentioned, it's going to be a while before there's a vaccine, a while before things get really rolling. How is Pennsylvania doing in terms of testing access? How's our district doing? What does the stock of personal protective equipment for our first responders look like? What are you hearing from folks?
Sure. Well, I mean, in Western Pennsylvania, we're really lucky here to have world-class healthcare facilities. I mean, they've been at the forefront of fighting this virus, of working to develop a vaccine. In Allegheny County, we have the ability to test 2,000 people per day. Um, just yesterday, the House actually passed an amendment to require the governor, in consultation with the Secretary of the Department of Health, to actually expand that testing even a little bit further. And it would actually give preference to first responders, as well as nursing homes and their employees, because we know that the majority of the cases and the majority of the deaths are coming out of the nursing homes and those long-term care facilities. And you hit it on the head, the need for the personal protective equipment, the PPE, that's just not going to go away anytime soon. Right here in the 40th district, we're so lucky to have a lot of generous groups and individuals who've been just so fantastic in getting masks to the fire department and to the police department. The fire department will wear their gear if they're out on a call, but if they're, at the station around each other, they're wearing, the homemade masks. We also have some really creative residents that are manufacturing them with the 3D printers. My office actually teamed up with the Bethel Park Upper St. Clair Rotary Club they used some of their rainy day funds to actually purchase masks from Lachina Drapery in Mount Lebanon. And so if anybody out there does need a mask, we have those available at the office. We just ask that you call, because we try to limit the number of people in the office at one time, and we'll get you an appointment and you can come in and pick up your mask. We actually had a gentleman coming in to pick up the mask, and he thought it was just so fantastic that we were doing that. And he said, I have this stimulus check, I don't need it, and I want to give it to Rotary so they can keep buying masks. So I think that even with all of the challenges and stresses of this really difficult time, that is one of the positives of this, is that you do get to see kind of the bright side of humanity, like what we're all capable of when we can be there for each other.
Absolutely. So what's next? What's next for the House? What's next for the state of Pennsylvania in the coming weeks? What do you have an eye on? What are you working on?
Well, what's next is the state budget. So it's due June 30th every year. And it's going to be really difficult for us this year. So we're getting started on that right now. We'll be in session, next week to, kind of kick it off. We are expected to have a $4 to $5 billion revenue deficit, and that's just our early projections. So typically our state budget is about $33, $34 billion. So that's a lot to make up, and we will get some assistance from the federal government. I don't know that it'll be quite enough to make up that whole amount, and again, that's just the early projection. I do feel like that's going to continue to grow as we pay out more in the unemployment, and just with the added expenses that the pandemic's caused. My prediction is that we'll pass probably a short-term budget here in the coming weeks, and certainly by June 30th we're constitutionally obligated to do so. But I think that we'll have to wait for some of the additional projections to come in, and then do maybe a longer-term budget in the fall. But that's our immediate need is getting that budget, and we're gonna be facing these deficits for, not only this immediate future in the coming weeks passing this year's budget, but this is something we're going to be dealing with for years to come.
That's right. And it is something that keeps those of us working at nonprofits up at night as well, I imagine.
Yeah.
The concerns are on a far, far lesser scale, but that same existential fears, I think you're right. We're looking at years rather than weeks.
Sure.
Representative, I'm so grateful for your time. And I wanted to make sure you get the last word here. What else do you want your constituents? What else do you want my congregants to know?
Oh, that's very generous. And I again, thank you for having me. It's always nice to see your face. And I thank you for staying in touch with your congregants. And this is such a, can be a lonely time for us all, even though, some of us are, just quarantined with our families. My office is here as a resource for you, not just as, a liaison with the state agencies, but really in any, difficult situation, chances are we do have, information or a connection that we can make for you. We, just not with the state agencies, but we're also connected to a number of nonprofits. So if there's, literally anything you can think of, we can probably point you in the right direction. And like I said, we're answering the phone 7 days a week. So please, feel free to reach out to us. I hope everyone's doing well, staying healthy, and that we're on the other side of this very soon.
From your mouth. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Rabbi.